Kanni, let's begin with this recent report. People and Planet Addressing the Interlinked Challenges of Climate Change, Poverty, and Hunger in Asia and the Pacific. The title sounds very self-explanatory, but what do people need to know right now?
You know, the reason, Elaine, we went with this connecting three big areas together is we saw our research was bringing out a lot of contrarian evidence on the Asia-Pacific. So on the one hand, you probably have the most dynamic region in terms of GDP growth, adult literacy, you see infant mortality dropping, more kids in school. Now, with all of that, and 1.5 billion people lifted out of extreme poverty, at the same time, so it's not a but, it's an and, you see climate regression. Right? You see the largest number of natural disasters creating the most destruction across the world in this region. Right? You see the inability to close gender gaps, women and girls falling even further behind. And with an aging population, the worry that we're not spending enough on health, education, social security, while the cost of debt is going up. So it was because of trying to see where are those interlinking points that can trigger big transformation and change that we decided to go with this report.
So let's begin with climate change. How is that compounding into other crises in the region, especially when you have vulnerable regions, vulnerable areas and populations?
You know, if I just look at over the last 2 decades, we're seeing, I would say, losses that account for about $450 billion. So just think, how are we going to recoup this investment? And at the same time, only about 8% of climate financing in the Asia and Pacific go actually into adaptation. So we are obviously seeing the displacement, right? It's something like 1.6 billion people impacted directly by floods alone in our region. That's about 90% of the global total of those impacted. And yet, why isn't money moving towards this area? So we had to look at some of the connectors of saying, what is it that'll change the way we produce, we consume? Agriculture and industry will have to adjust to climate. And interestingly, UNDP ran a global climate vote recently. Something like 97% of people put the climate issue as the highest priority to be dealt with in their lifetime and for their children. And this goes from China to Afghanistan to Tuvalu.
What have been the main challenges when it comes to development, economic growth, and job creation in the Asia-Pacific region?
Well, let me take one right off the top, which is about 1.3 billion workers live in our informal sector and live off of our informal sector with no legal safeguards, right? No guarantee of what tomorrow will bring. So a big change has to be, it's not about formalizing the informal sector, it's about putting legal protections and providing the necessary benefits to informal sector workers. Now, a lot of them are women, including in the care economy. As you know, the care economy is unpaid work, and yet is a large part, in particular with an aging population in a number of our countries. So this is something that's going to be a significant area. A second is a rethink on debt. The debt burden swallows a country's fiscal space. So a number of Asian countries, I would say, spend over half, or at least 1/3, of their national income on paying interest on debt. That's more than what they spend on public education and health put together. So this is not sustainable. And finally, in our region, sadly, the fallback on the role of women, respect, agency, leadership, and the ability to earn equal pay for equal work, we're not there yet.
You were recently in China. Can you tell us about the visit and some of the key takeaways and observations that you made during your time there?
So quite a few things. I have visited China. My first visit, I think, was out of graduate school in the early 1990s. I have seen significant change in how China is moving along a path of progress. Again, learning hard lessons, because for years, maybe trying some of the same recipes for development. Yes, eliminating extreme poverty and GDP growing. Now you see much more of an effort, for example, on rural revitalization. How do you push out progress that is more sustainable into rural areas of China where large numbers live? So that's a big change. The second is combining climate action with biodiversity protection and nature solutions. These were done separately before. And I think China is showing that if you're going to move on a low carbon pathway, you've got to bring these together and really invest across these elements. And a third, to me, with an aging population, is that there has to be and is now increasingly more support for older people in terms of social services, social security, pension benefits, housing, so you don't leave old people behind. And so these are some of the areas in a more kind of a more equal and sustainable prosperity that we were seeing and I was seeing, and hopefully the UN and UNDP is contributing to in China's new pathways forward.
Do you see things that can be applied in other countries in the region or other regions of the world as one of the bigger countries in the neighborhood, so to speak?
Absolutely. I mean, if I look from the Asia Pacific, I think countries like China, like India, like Indonesia, owe it to the world to bring their lessons, bring the technologies they have developed, whether that's for electric vehicles, for hydrogen, for other sources of renewables, new financing instruments. You know, these are not just debtor countries, these are creditor countries. And so providing more affordable credit and at the same time sharing their experience. China, India, Indonesia, these are countries that are big test laboratories for new development pathways. If it works at scale in these countries, my goodness, it can be applied anywhere in the world.
Kanni Wignaraja, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.